All right, today we're going to crack open a really powerful framework. It's a method for seeing what truly goes on inside any organization, and it's designed to help you diagnose problems and lead change way more effectively because, well, it forces you to see the entire picture.
So think about this. We've all seen it happen, right? A brilliant strategy, it's planned down to the last detail, it gets rolled out, and then it just completely falls flat. It hits these invisible walls, people start pushing back in unexpected ways, or it just kind of fizzles out. Why? Why does this happen over and over again? The answer almost always is that the failure starts with a flawed diagnosis. We see the tip of the iceberg, the formal plan, the official strategy, but we totally miss the huge, hidden mass of complexity that's lurking right below the surface. We tend to look at organizations through just one lens, the one we're comfortable with. But what you don't see is exactly what can sink you.
So, to fix this, we need a framework that embraces that complexity. We're going to explore three totally distinct ways of seeing: the structural lens, the political lens, and the cultural lens. And then, the most important part, we'll put them all together to build a truly complete diagnosis. Okay, our first lens is the structural one. This is probably the most familiar to all of us. It's the view of the organization as this intricate machine, a system of gears and levers that you can logically engineer to hit very clear, rational goals. So at its core, structural design is all about the formal architecture. Think org charts, reporting lines, official processes, KPIs, information systems, the blueprint of the company. It's all about deliberately crafting these pieces to align perfectly with the overall strategy.
And really, this boils down to three big design choices. First, you've got grouping. How do we actually divide up the work and put people into teams or departments? Second, linking. Okay, now how do we connect all those different groups so they can actually coordinate and talk to each other? And finally, aligning. How do we use things like rewards and incentives to make sure every single person is pulling in the same direction?
But what if the organization isn't a perfect rational machine? Well, that brings us to our second lens, the political one. This one pretty much throws the blueprint out the window and sees the organization as a messy, dynamic arena. It completely drops the assumption that everyone shares the same goals, and instead focuses on the reality of competing interests. This perspective says that what actually happens in a company isn't decided by the org chart, but by power and by influence. It's all about understanding that different stakeholders, individuals, departments, maybe even informal factions, have their own agendas. And the outcomes we see are just the result of this constant negotiation and struggle for influence. The building blocks for a political analysis are pretty straightforward. First, you have to map out who all the stakeholders are and figure out what they really want. Then you analyze their sources of power. And this is so crucial. Power doesn't just come from a title on a business card. That's positional power. It also flows from personal things, like deep expertise, and from a person's network, who they know and the relationships they have. And this just shows you that power doesn't always follow the official hierarchy. In one classic study, a factory's maintenance crew had an incredible amount of sway. I mean, these weren't executives, but because the entire operation would literally grind to a halt without their unique expertise, they could make demands and get pretty much whatever they wanted. That's real power. Now, our third lens goes even deeper than formal structures or power plays. The cultural meaning lens views the organization not as a machine and not as an arena, but as a community, or maybe even a tribe, that's bound together by a shared reality. This perspective is all about the unwritten rules, the stories people tell, the symbols that matter, and the shared history that gives everyone a sense of identity and belonging. The assumption here is that our actions are guided by these shared meanings, that collective understanding of what's important, what's valued, and what it really means to be a member of this group. It's the way we do things around here. Disney is the absolute masterclass in this. Think about their language. It's so deliberate. Customers are guests. Employees are cast members, and they wear costumes. This isn't just fluffy language. It is a powerful cultural tool that constantly reinforces a shared identity around performance and the guest experience. It shapes behavior from the inside out. Okay, so we have three really different ways of seeing an organization, right? A rational machine, a political arena, and a cultural community. The real power, the true insight, doesn't come from picking your favorite one. It comes from learning how to overlay them to create a single, three-dimensional diagnosis of what's going on. And this table just sums it up perfectly. The structural lens sees a machine, and it's always asking about efficiency and alignment. The political lens sees an arena, and it asks who gets what. The cultural lens sees a tribe, and asks, what do we truly believe here? Each one reveals a totally different but absolutely vital layer of reality. Let's look at a real-world case, MIT's creation of the Schwarzman College of Computing. A purely structural approach would have just been to redraw the org chart and announce it, but the leaders knew that would be a disaster. So politically, they brought in over 100 stakeholders for working groups to build coalitions and manage all the competing interests. And culturally, they designed the entire change process to fit right in with MIT's core values of community involvement and bold innovation. You see, they were actively managing through all three lenses at the same time. So here's the bottom line. Using all three lenses gives you a much richer, more accurate diagnosis. You start to see the hidden connections between the structure, the power dynamics, and the culture. And look, this isn't just some academic exercise. It's a practical toolkit for de-risking your big projects and designing change that actually has a chance of sticking. And that really brings us to the final thought, a question for you. We all have a default lens, one we just naturally gravitate towards. Maybe you're an engineer, so you always see structure. Maybe you're in sales, so you see the politics. Or maybe you've been with the company for 20 years and you just see the culture. So the question to leave you with is this: which lens do you tend to ignore? And more importantly, what critical part of the picture are you missing because of that blind spot?